For more on last night's State of the Union address, I'm joined by my colleague Jim Malone, Voice of America's national correspondent. Jim, how important politically was the president's speech last night to his presidency in this election year?
Well, Mwamoyo, I think you could argue it was fairly important because of late the political debate in the United States has been dominated by the Republican Party. They are going about the process of choosing a Republican presidential nominee to run against President Obama in the November general election. And there's been a lot of criticism in that primary. There's one or two debates almost every week. So the president's come under a lot of fire on the national airwaves. And he had an hour to himself last night to sort of present his blueprint for the country, where he'd like to take the country over the next year or so, and make his case to the American people. So in that sense, it was probably the right time to be able to make that speech. As we should also point out, of course, this is an annual tradition that he gives a State of the Union address to Congress and to the American people.
And do you think he accomplished that to make his case to the American people and tell them or show them that his administration is doing well for America?
Well, I guess the jury's out on that. I did see one analysis by a Democrat-leaning pollster who said that the president scored well with some voters who were watching the speech. I think what we saw was a president kind of trying to move to the political middle in this country. There's been so much sort of action and angry rhetoric on the right with the Republicans, and so much of the president's program has been bottled up in the building behind me by the Republicans, especially in the House of Representatives, that we've kind of got this gridlock in Washington. The president's trying to find a way to break through that because the public opinion polls in this country show again and again that what Americans really want is for the two sides to work together. That may not happen. This is an election year. Usually things get frozen in place. And the president at least wants to position himself as someone who's striving for the middle, striving to have some sort of bipartisan agreements and get something done. The only other thing I'd say, though, at times, his tone was a little more strident against the Republicans, and they certainly picked up on that. So, you know, the battle continues, as it were.
As a matter of fact, Jim, at times he sounded defiant, feisty, I would say, with statements like, I will not back away, I will not back down, I will not go back. What was all that about?
Well, not only that, because a lot of what he wants to do is being blocked because in the House of Representatives, the Republicans have the majority, the Democrats have one in the Senate. Things are blocked in the House, like for job creation, that he'd like to see done. So he, at several times, would say, and if you don't do it, you know, I will strive to do it on my own. So he's trying to show voters that he's willing to be active. You mentioned at the top of the show the disappointment, you know, felt somewhere around the world about this presidency in terms of being active on the international front. Well, that's also felt to some degree by Democrats and other voters who supported Barack Obama in 2008. They kind of were expecting more from him. They realized the economy was a terrific challenge for him and remains so. And also they were kind of hoping he would be able to unify the country more and get more done through Congress. It hasn't worked out that way. And the lay of the land right now is probably more partisan gridlock this year as we head toward the November election.
And Jim, we didn't hear much on foreign policy except for at the beginning of the speech when he addressed the issues of withdrawing the troops from Iraq and Osama bin Laden, and at the end also he dealt on foreign policies in terms of the war in Iraq in length, but we didn't hear much.
No, we didn't, and you know, I've been covering these things a long time now. If you go back to the era of President George W. Bush, of course it was a different time with the terrorist attacks, but probably half the speech would have been directed to the international audience, would have talked about America's place in the world, national security. We were fighting wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I think what we're seeing now is this president and to a certain extent the American people turning inward a bit. You know, they're tired of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. They want to bring the troops home. and they want to focus on the issues and problems at home, because we've had some very difficult economic problems to deal with over the last few years. They're not sorted out yet. Things may be headed in the right direction. But I think that was the president's way of signaling, I hear the American people and where they want to focus, and it's about jobs at home, economic security at home, and, a brighter future for everyone.
And when we talk about Africa, of course, I mean, in these kind of settings, we don't expect much to be talked about on Africa. But is there anything that you could say that Africans could take away from last night's speech?